And welcome back, everybody. We are here for round 6 of the 2023 Pokemon Bochum Regional Championships. I am Costa, and I am joined, as ever, by the ever-so-lovely Mr. Ben Kiriakou. And, of course, we are here for a thrilling day so far. All of the matches on stream have honestly been so great. Such a delight. A bit of a belly bolt action that was really missed last set. It was there on Team Preview, I swear, but unfortunately, it was not there on the field.
Right, and that's something I saw, like, on the big screen. We saw the belly bot in the team preview, and everybody was really excited backstage. And they're like, whoa, what's this Pokemon coming out here? Because, like, I haven't seen a belly bot. I've seen a couple, like, you know, you're playing a few games on the online ladder. You're, like, having
Trying
some
to
fun.
make it work.
Yeah, exactly, and all of that. But, like, it's never made it. Like, it's such a fun Pokemon, but it never actually managed to make it to a competitive team, let alone being 5-0 now going into the 6th round of Swiss at the Bochum Regional Championships.
But who else would it be piloting that type of team other than Mr. David Kotesh, of course. A genius when it comes to team building, super creative, and honestly has a next level sort of mindset going into understanding what the meta is and how to properly handle it.
And I really like his approach as well, because, you know, he's a player that adds the strange choices last rather than first. He's not somebody like he's not like, hey, let's build around Bellybot and bring a team. He's like, hey, I'm going to build a team, and I need this, I need that, I need something else. And Bellybot probably just filled exactly that niche.
Somehow it did. Assault Vest, so be wary of it. It will be joining the ladder at some point soon. But of course, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and check out what the current standings are during this tournament. See a bit about where each of the trainers are, what sort of expectations we have, which trainers are in form, and we do actually have it a bit on screen here. For example, we've got Daniele Segzizi, who is currently 5-0, quite a few 5-0s, about 16, I think.
16 indeed. We got some really good names here, and names that we've seen on the stream already, still managing to maintain that undefeated record. Matt Maynard that we saw in round 1. We've got Flavio Del Pidio, a previous European international champion. Aurelian that we had on stream. We have Alex Soto that we had on stream as well. So and Anosh as well. So many players here that, you know, we have to pay homage to being fantastic in this tournament and really being on form.
They really are. We're going to be seeing a huge showcase of Europe's finest and brightest here. So it's really exciting to be able to be a part of this as well. We know a lot of trainers have some really big dreams and goals that they're very determined in accomplishing and reaching, because like we were talking about earlier on when we introduced the show earlier this morning, we've got a lot of travel awards and stipends to take into consideration. It is quite literally a race against time and events. Unfortunately, we don't have local events, so regionals are essentially Europe's locals at the current moment.
Right, and you know, there's quite a few tournaments over the years. We're seeing some more records coming up here. Number 17 to number 32. Andrea Olea is a name that stands out to me there at position 30 right now. 4-1 record. The player that won the London Open at last year's World Championship. So good to see them back on the field and having a pretty consistent tournament. I mean, 5 rounds in, only losing 1 match. It's a pretty good record, and one that you'd be happy to take going into these sort of tournaments.
It really is. And we've got a couple of other German nationals as well. A couple to note: Matthias Schudowski. We've got Robert Vine, which we did actually feature earlier on, as well as Fevzi Ozkan. We've got Anton Frick. And they're in a situation where, yes, they've taken 1 loss. However, there's so many more rounds to be able to take into account. You can just have a really good set of runs for the remaining set in order to just go ahead and accomplish reaching that X and 2.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't really matter how many you lose as long as you don't lose any more than 2 matches that you will be playing tomorrow. Of course, you don't want to be leaving things to chance. You want to be getting that top 8 spot, and losing less day 1 means you can lose more day 2.
Like I think that's how it works.
Like that's pretty much that's how I always thought about it when I was playing these tournaments. And I'm sure these players are just going into every match just trying to have a clear head and trying to just win the game.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the name of the game, essentially. So being able to go ahead and check how things will pan out is very, very cool and highly anticipated. But talking about cool and highly anticipated, Ben, I believe we know who our next 2 trainers are going to be, where we will be featuring them on stream. We've got from one end, Flavio Del Pidio versus Guillermo Castilla.
And a former world runner-up is something that we're really excited to be able to feature. Did very, very well. In fact, I believe got into the top tables of last Bochum regional champion ships. I believe
taking the win,
right?
Regional champion, the currently standing Bochum regional champion.
So we get to see whether or not Guillermo will be able to defend his crown here coming into this year's tournament. It's been a few years since then.
Yes.
A few things have changed, but Guillermo's definitely a player to watch out for. London's World Championships last year, a runner-up, as we mentioned previously, and that's no small feat.
No, it really isn't. And being able to just reach at the pinnacle of greatness when it comes to the competitive play of video game championships is something that is honestly such a great reward from being so consistent. Guillermo always has that sort of next level determination of understanding what needs to be done and making those very risky reads where he feels that he must in order to turn the tides of battle.
He's definitely not afraid to take a chance in certain positions, but of course he obviously knows how to play the objective game as well, knows when it's just correct to pick particular moves. But Flavio is a player that we've seen so much, hailing from Italy, and Flavio is a player that I really enjoy watching because I feel like Flavio's always kind of in control of the game. Like he's a calm player. He's very collected, and doesn't make too many mistakes. Doesn't really, reach out and do those big, grandiose, spectacular plays all the time. Sometimes, he does. He's capable, certainly, of doing that. But most of the time, it's those incremental, small improvements in the game. One step after the other, and making sure that he's getting to a position where he has his Pokemon in a good place for the end game.
And he is a standing European international champion as well, to boot. So another factor to take into this consideration with the overwhelming experience of what we are going to showcase between these 2 trainers. And it's always such a delight. I think we've already had several international champions actually join the stream today, which is incredible. You already know the level is that high when it comes to this weekend's event.
And more we're going to be finding those top-level trainers, the ones that can break through into the top 8 of this style of tournament. Now that we've had our structure changed and we're playing 2 days of Swiss with 14 overall rounds, it really does put everyone to the test and, weed out the players that maybe don't have the perfect version of their current team, maybe just not quite able to make those calls at the crucial times. You have to be so consistent to get that 12-2 and maybe even 11-3 record that gets you into the top 8.
Yeah, and I think you've got to have a mind of steel when it comes to keeping that mental check-in with yourself every single time. You don't want to get a bit carried away with your emotions or even just the general exhaustion, because it is a lot to take in, a lot of rounds, a lot of mental power that's going into figuring out, what matchup you're about to go up against, what sort of flowcharts you need to run through in your mind that you would have already memorized or practiced with 1,000 games, either on ladder or in between your friends as well. So there's a lot. There's a lot to take in, quite literally.
And, we talk about friends, and actually that's something that is really good to touch on in this scenario, because both the Spanish and the Italian communities are very well interconnected. They do a lot of stuff in their own communities as well as intermix with other communities as well. And that's the reason that you find a lot of really strong Spanish and Italian players. There's a real depth to their player pool, and the community is the reason why these players really cherish the bonds that they form and use those to improve all of the players in the community as a whole.
Exactly. As much as love there is, we know that these two fiery regions do have some really good competition between themselves, which really make up for stellar matches for us to be able to see on stream, which is why I am so excited going into this.
Exactly. Well, I think we are getting our players ready. So we're going to be going and seeing the players facing up against each other on the stage, staring each other down, getting ready for the match, of course, exchanging their team lists between each other, having a little bit of a look and seeing what the matchup looks like it's going to be.
Yes, exactly that. But talking about the matchup, we are going to be taking a look at Guillermo's team, as we do have it on the left. He's going to be running a Golden Go, Arcanine, Iron Hands, Iron Bundle, Roaring Moon, and a Moongus.
He is indeed, and he's absolutely loving being on the stage.
It's like he
right
heard us there.
I hope he can't hear us, but,
so
you know, there we go. Flavio there having a great time as well. Always good to see these players, you know, enjoying themselves on the main stage. And, of course, they know each other well. Guillermo's a player that's been playing a very long time. Look at them having a bit of a laugh between themselves.
It's always great to see. I think, honestly, being able to not only compete at this world-class level competitively wise, but also remember that in the end of the day, it honestly is just about having fun, because through having fun, you'll be able to properly enjoy the actual game in all of its different elements.
Right, and on your screen at the moment, you'll see some achievements for both players, which are basically like all wins.
I think so.
It's just like, hey, you know what? I won a couple of tournaments here and there. Guillermo, a player that's been playing a very, very long time. 2011, 2012 national champion titles. And of course, more recently, as we said, the defending Bochum regional champion. Not quite winning the World Championships, but getting mighty close there.
Getting the closest you can.
Closest you can without taking the prize. And, of course, EUIC champion Flavio Del Pidio in 2019, getting a regional championship to his name and a special event championships, both tournaments being on the same level in 2018 and 2022. And the same World Championships that Guillermo was able to get runner-up, Flavio was still there getting top 16, and that's no easy feat either.
No, it really isn't, and it just really pays respects to just wanting to have that passion and drive, to want to keep on going and be consistent, try to strive for the very best that you can throughout the years. We have a lot of years of experience between these two trainers.
We do. On your screen at the moment, you'll see the team for Guillermo Castilla: Iron Hands, Amoongus, Arcanine, Iron Bundle, Golden Go, and the Roaring Moon. And we saw it in a previous round. I'm looking at that Roaring Moon, and I'm looking at Jawlock there. Really excited to see the application of that move. Didn't see it in the previous rounds either, so my appetite is still very much there.
It's kind of locked eye contact with me there, if I do say so myself. So actually seeing it is really nice. We've been a bit over about its interaction, where it can lock both itself as well as the Pokemon it has targeted on the field until one of them do get KO'd. But over on Flavio's side, we do have a very interesting core, Fire, Water, Grass. We've got the Arcanine, Amoongus, and Palafin. Most notably, we have seen teams like those do really, really well from Gavin's side of things. And we've got a couple of more support Pokemon as well as sweepers.
Right, and on the support side, you've got Amoongus holding that covert cloak, so isn't able to be affected by things like Fake Out, Icy Wind technically, and things like that, yeah. I guess.
And Salt Cure as well.
Salt Cure, yeah, lots of things that covert cloak stops you from being affected by. So that's going to be potentially a little bit impactful in front of Iron Hands, say, on Guillermo's side of the field. But I'm looking at that Dragonite with the clear amulet and Dragon Dance, and it's like, hey, that's looking really cool right now, because you can boost up. It's not going to lower its stats, but I think really importantly, it gives you an avenue to play multi-scale rather than inner focus, and the clear amulet allows you to not take any stat drops.
It really does. It's a very interesting sort of combination there to take into consideration, most definitely. However, we are here. Game 1, we are not here anymore. We were here, but unfortunately we are no longer. That was about to be Game 1. We did see a couple of the leads from both trainers' side of the field, but unfortunately we did get a disconnection, so don't worry everybody, we will be back shortly. I mean, so far we haven't had any disconnection, so this is the first. We might as well get it out and out of the way now.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, looking at Golden Go and Iron Bundle for Guillermo versus Arcanine and Golden Go for Flavio, probably a little bit of the favor on Flavio's side of the field, but I think the important thing to talk about here is now going into Game 1 again.
Yep.
These trainers are not obligated to play the same leads.
Yes.
So, yeah, maybe they can have a little bit of an agreement between themselves as to whether they want to, just keep it consistent for the sake of the match. Maybe one player's a little bit happier than the other player about those sort of conversations, but there's no obligation to. So we could see something completely different in the lead-up, and certainly, it's... Guillermo's Iron Bundle is really good against Arcanine. The Golden Go on Flavio's side of the field is really good against Iron Bundle.
Yep.
And the Golden Go's kind of stare each other down and says like, okay, are you going to terrestrialize? Maybe. Are you going to terrestrialize? And, you kind of question whether or not any Shadow Balls are going to be coming out.
Well, exactly. And I think it's not only about the terrestrialization, right? It's also about, are you going to try to go for the offensive move right now, or are you going to try to, nastily plot something against me and get a +2 in special attack to go on the offensive in the subsequent turn?
Exactly. So, yeah, it's a difficult scenario to be in, and of course, one of the other things that we probably need to talk about while we've got a little bit of time to do so is the Arcanine on Flavio's side of the field. He's carrying that Terra grass type, so would be able to, stop it taking as much damage from the Hydro Pump, but then that opens it up to being attacked by Freeze Dry. So, like, one of the reasons why Iron Bundle is such a powerful Pokemon in this format, because it's really hard to be able to resist the combination of water and ice type damage.
Yeah, it really, really is. And I think having the utility move of Freeze Dry escorted with the very impressive speed of it is really, really cool. Like you said, you've got Icy Wind, you've got Speed Control on your side, Hydro Pump, very good offensive water type move, accompanied by, of course, its special attack. But then Freeze Dry being able to handle any other water types and just being able to just flip the typings on its head and just say, right, now you are super effective. You need to be taking this into consideration. Hence why we don't see as many Gastrodons, for example, or maybe even Pelipper, barring, of course, Gavin's Pelipper. I think being able to just go ahead and start seeing those type of Pokemon not rise up in usage anymore and kind of like minimize makes a lot of sense with Iron Bundle rising instead. Right,
and it's easy to see why, along with Iron Hands being that such a good supportive Pokemon. I mean, it takes Hariyama, gives it the electric typing, and I think myself, when I looked at it originally, I looked at its abilities and things that it could do, and you kind of lose an ability compared to its counterpart Hariyama. Thick, fat, great ability to have. Guts from Hariyama, also a great ability to have, especially with those heavy Trick Room teams. And you lose that for Quark Drive, which is a little bit more difficult to set up. But what you gain in that electric type is just a bunch of resistances and the ability to use big electric type attacks, which are few and far between in Series 2.
Which kind of paints the picture as to why we've seen Great Tusk, for example, start rising in usage, because originally, I think even with the usage stats that we saw earlier on in the day, we saw a lot of early Series 2 tournaments bringing the Iron Hands, it reigning supreme, actually, in a couple of tournaments, and then all of a sudden, we start seeing Great Tusk starting to rise and Iron Hands starting to drop. So this is the sort of trends that we talk about, and what influential impact each of these tournaments have in how each of these Pokemon are used.
Right, and when it's easy to understand why Pokemon like Great Tusk are really attractive to players looking to build their teams. But you only have to look a couple of years back, or within the last couple of years, Landorus, Ferian form, whenever it's been allowed, has been like a dominant force in VGC, just having Earthquake, let alone a new move, Headlong Rush, that doesn't actually require your partner to be sort of floating about somewhere out of the way of the Earthquake. But of course, in every format that Landorus hasn't been allowed to be used, Garchomp, it's been great, hasn't it? I mean, ground is such an important type in VGC, offensively and defensively. But of course, then you combine it with that fighting type as well, and it starts to be like, oh, hey, hang on a second. There's not many things that can take attacks from a Pokemon as powerful as that.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's a really cool point to make, because most times there's always taking into consideration ground types, like you said. Offensively, there have been sort of a couple of strategies such as Disquake, in other words, a Discharge, Earthquake, which have been paired along the years by side by side. I think we've seen a couple of Pokemon that have tried to make that work. Unfortunately, haven't been able to do quite nicely, but Rotom is one of those Pokemon, dependent, of course, on the preference of the form, that can really pull that off, maybe even by the side of Great Tusk, which I have noticing it's starting to rise a bit in usage.
Rotom's a really, I think, quite underused mon. It's a Pokemon that's seen like really high usage in previous formats. Right when I started playing back in 2011, I guess the second year, 2012, 2013, Rotom was like on every single team. It was so good, and now it sees a little bit less usage, but that. Well, a combination of either electric and water, electric and fire coverage, and that ability levitate, which is, again, few and far between in these sort of formats, is really, really strong, I think.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. So who knows? We may start seeing more use of that during the tournaments, of course. I don't think I've seen any today, if I'm not mistaken. Who knows? Maybe we'll see some coming over in Knoxville when that's going to be starting later on as well, if it hasn't already. But of course, we are still waiting for both of our trainers to get everything set up due to that disconnection, unfortunately. But for now, you're stuck with us.
And here we go. We're going back to the stage now. Without further ado, of course, we can't wait any longer for this match to get started. So, our players again. If you've just joined us now, Guillermo Castilla, Flavio Del Pidio, facing up against each other in round 6 of the tournament. Both of these players at a 5-0 record.
5-0 record, so I'm quite curious to see if they have gone ahead and agreed, for example, to a gentleman's agreement of, right, we're going to lead the same, we're very happy with it, or to actually see if legally they're allowed to go ahead and change things up. Will they change things up? Who do you think may try to opt for that?
Well, I think, the big thing is whether or not they just want to play it as a new game one or not. And I think it would be reasonable too. They've had a bit of an idea now of what each of them wanted to bring to the match. And that kind of gives us an advantage to both players, doesn't it? Because, and both players have been playing this game both a long time and at the highest level. They know what to do with these sort of things going into a pseudo game 2 scenario. Yeah. So, I don't think they by any means need to, or certainly they don't have to. But I'd like to see them, going with the same leads just to see how that sort of scenario would unfold.
Exactly that. We see the trainers are going ahead and giving each other the good luck fist bump there, of course. So likely will be joining and heading straight into now the current real game 1. Let's hope we have the leads. They do seem different indeed. We are, of course, going to be actually seeing Guillermo bring the Golden Go and the Iron Bundle, whilst over on Flavio's side, the Golden Go and Arcanine.
Yeah, exactly the same leads as game 1. Mark 1, let's say.
Mark 1.
So we'll see how this plays out. Both players have had quite a bit of time, much more than the usual 45 seconds to a minute that they get to decide on their turns in normal circumstances. So I'm expecting to see some reads here. I would quite like to see how the Iron Bundle attacks this turn, whether it goes for an Icy Wind to try and get the speed control on his side, on Guillermo's side of the field, or not, as the case may be.
As the case is indeed, Hydro Pump does target down what was that Arcanine slot, is now the Iron Hands, and yes, we've got the nasty plot being set up over on both sides of the field for the trainers. Kind of what we were talking about. Instead of going ahead and attempting to target down that slot and potentially miss a KO, you might as well guarantee it the subsequent.
Right, and Iron Hands coming in here does bring the fake out into play, and because it's so defensively orientated, it can take all of those attacks like a champ. I mean, Hydro Pump from an Iron Bundle is nothing to worry or. Let me rephrase that. Hydro Pump from Iron Bundle is a really, really strong attack. So seeing Iron Hands take almost no damage from that attack is really good to see.
It really, really is. And being able to actually see the change going on right now, the switch out, we've got the Iron Bundle for the Arcanine. Arcanine is going to be able to go ahead and get that Intimidate off onto the Iron Hands, but also is a really good switch in for a potential Make It Rain from Flavio's side. However, we're going to be seeing Guillermo's Golden Go attempt to go for the Protect, actually followed by the exact same move over on Flavio. So Flavio might be trying to go for the Pivot Switch and does indeed with the Volt Switch. So really nice move there, kind of allowing Flavio to choose a Pokemon, of course, of his choice, to bring in based on any sort of switch-ins that Guillermo did attempt, which of course he did.
Right, and the Arcanine coming in here was a good opportunity to take a lot of damage from Make It Rain. Did like the double protect, actually, because Guillermo's nasty plot did actually go off before Flavio's, and so depending on how these Pokemon are trained, obviously it's two Golden Goes facing each other down, so they can be trained to be exactly the same speed. But it might be that Guillermo has those extra few points that make a really big difference. Arcanine, though, coming in for Flavio is a big, big deal. That's going to do two things. That's going to stop the Arcanine on Guillermo's side of the field being able to knock out the Golden Go on Flavio's side of the field in one. But equally allow Flavio to be able to maybe knock out the Golden Go on Guillermo's side of the field in one. So a mirror situation, but very different scenarios for both of these players.
Well, exactly, because it also depends on how each of these Pokemon are trained, right? Which one is faster, which one's more bulkier, which one has more investment when it comes to its attack and damage output. So will that be a determinant on whether we're going to be seeing a KO being taken right now or dealt onto the opposing Golden Go, or will that Golden Go be forced to terrestrialize?
Well, terrestrializing seems to be the name of the game right now. Golden Go, and I didn't actually notice the styles of both of these trainers, so don't know which one it is just yet going for that Water Terror, but it is a Golden Go changing its form on Guillermo's side of the field. Also a terrestrialization on Flavio's side of the field. I wouldn't be surprised to see that Golden Go, going for the Terra Water as well. Snap.
Snap indeed. Wow, it's sort of like both of these trainers have practiced together and they understand the intricate details of how to face the mirror. Flare Blitz does target down Guillermo's Golden Go. Not going to be able to do much. We actually see interesting speed interactions there. Golden Go from Guillermo's side is going to be moving first before Guillermo's own Arcanine. And talking about that Arcanine, Snarl does come out, will be dropping the opposing Golden Go, which is slower, down to -1 of its special attack. But wow, that dealt a lot of damage there. And with what seems to be a very sort of situation dependent on the speed tiering of each of these Pokemon.
Yeah, and I like the position that Flavio's put himself into here. The Golden Go on Guillermo's side of the field, while it has got that leftovers recovery, isn't likely to get out of range of the Arcanine on Flavio's side of the field. So, it's a little bit difficult. I mean, Guillermo's fighting to stay on the front foot here because the Arcanine on Guillermo's side of the field is faster than the Golden Go on Flavio. So, you can keep snarling, you can keep putting a little bit of pressure on, but the key thing here is Guillermo's Golden Go took so much more damage than Flavio's last turn. And because of the nasty plots that happened previously, the Golden Go on Flavio's side of the field is still going to do lots and lots of damage.
Exactly, but we're going to be seeing the switch out once again. Now Iron Hands wants to pivot itself straight in. It will have fake out pressure the subsequent turn. And surprise, surprise, we see another Iron Hands arrive on the field. However, Flavio opted to switch the Golden Go out there, which is going to be an interesting play. It'll be curious to see if it will come into effect or not and influence the outcome of this turn. However, Golden Go over on Guillermo's side is going to be able to recover a tiny bit of leftovers there with HP and protect itself. So it doesn't want to go out just yet.
I guess the question is whether we're going to be seeing the gentleman's rule of VGC. Do you fake out a fake outer? You know, it's been the case for many years. These Iron Hands that have just came in can opt to trade fake outs, but if these players know what the speed tiers are between the Iron Hands on both sides of the field, you know, they can actually maybe target the opposing Iron Hands to stop a fake out from their opponent. A little bit risky, but kind of a play that you can maybe make in game one just to try to scout things out.
As we're going to be seeing the switch out now of the Iron Hands on Guillermo's side, not even wanting to try to get into that process of anticipating a fake out from Flavio's side, which indeed does come up, but actually targets down the Golden Go there. We see the Will-O-Wisp does go into what was the Iron Hands and is now the Arcanine. So a bit of a stalemate, barring the fake out damage dealt onto Guillermo's.
Right, and now Guillermo's getting in a good position here, having the Arcanine that hasn't been intimidated in front of the Arcanine that has been intimidated.
Yeah.
Blocking the Will-O-Wisp, a great turn there. That might mean that the Golden Go on Guillermo's side of the field is able to take another attack. And that Iron Hands, if so, is looking in a bit of a precarious position because the double up from the Golden Go and the Arcanine on Guillermo's side of the field onto Flavio's Iron Hands, it's going to do lots of damage. Iron Hands, we know whether it's got Protect or not, of course, but Iron Hands is a Pokemon that doesn't usually carry moves that allow it to Protect. We already saw the Volt Switch in place of where a Protect would potentially normally be. So, yeah, with the switch out from Arcanine into Amoonguss here, I'm feeling that Iron Hands is in a dangerous place.
It may well be, as Shadow Ball is going to be targeting it down right now, bringing it to just beneath half. Is Arcanine's Flare Blitz enough? It is not. Iron Hands will survive. Is there any burn? There is no burn. There's a Wild Charge, however, does target down Guillermo's Golden Go, and of course does pick up the KO as well. But I think in turn of that, it may actually get self-KO itself due to recoil.
I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, it does. Iron Hands is one of those Pokemon that's got so much HP, and Golden Go's HP percentage was pretty low there. So, yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised to see the Iron Hands survive, but does go down.
Yeah.
And I guess, that's a trade that's sort of okay to make, but now Flavio kind of has to worry about the Iron Hands that Guillermo has in the back. Because, even though the terrestrialization has been used and there's no Terra Grass coming out from the Iron Hands on Guillermo's side of the field, that means Amoonguss is going to be pretty effective in this late turns. There's still the Iron Bundle to look out for on Guillermo's side of the field, and that's going to be able to put on so much pressure onto that Amoonguss, as well as the Arcanine in the later game.
And it's quite interesting, this Iron Bundle actually doesn't have Icy Wind. Guillermo's, quite interestingly enough, opted to select Encore as the move to replace it. I'm not sure if that can potentially come into effect in any future turns, maybe anticipating sort of Protects perhaps, or try to lock a Flavio's Pokemon into a certain move, which may be beneficial for himself. But given the situation, Iron Bundles is most definitely the fastest thing on the field right now. And it's quite interesting as well, Ben, because we saw a bit of a stalemate of multiple pivot plays from both trainers only result in a KO on each other's side during the same turn.
Yeah, and you normally see these sort of, players feeling around each other, trying to, take those little KOs, get those little bits of damage, protecting themselves, as we're seeing from the Iron Bundle now, from any extra harm. And now the Amoonguss taking a Flare Blitz. We're getting to the business end of this game where a lot of Pokemon are taking lots of damage. Spore going into the Iron Bundle, protecting there, and what looked like a Shadow Ball coming out from the Golden Go into that Protect as well.
Yeah, and of course, something noteworthy as well, we've got leftovers on both of these Golden Goes. I think, judging the situation, we do have a lot of mirroring of the team archetype that they're both carrying. There's two different Pokemon, but they do share the same types as well. The Dragonite having Dragon type, the Roaring Moon having the Dragon type, as well as the Iron Bundle having the Water Ice, as opposed to the Palafin having the Water.
Right, and one of the things that that really makes a difference of is this Iron Bundle in these sort of positions is really well placed to be doing lots of damage, just because Freeze Dry hits super effective into those water type Pokemon. Golden Go switching out here for the Arcanine, getting that Intimidate onto Arcanine on Guillermo's side of the field. Probably going to avoid a knockout on the Amoonguss, but Freeze Dry coming in clutch here and taking another KO for Guillermo. No more switches coming out from Flavio's side of the field as Snarl hits into that Arcanine. Not going to be making too much of a difference to Arcanine's damage output here, though. Yeah, the only thing affected there, I believe, is likely to be Snarl, of course. But in that situation, that was a bit of a game of chicken. Flavio could have gone for the Protect on the Amoonguss, anticipating Guillermo to anticipate that. However, Guillermo said, no, I'm not going to read your bluff. I'm going to go straight for the Freeze Dry and try to pick up a KO if I can and position myself, if necessary, based on the other slot that you're trying to switch in or interact with. Yeah, and now we're getting to this part of the game. Not having an Iron Hands is really a less favorable position than having the Iron Hands that's going to be switching in here for the Arcanine, just because you get that fake out pressure on the field. Guillermo making an offensive read here, getting that Freeze Dry onto Golden Go on Flavio's side of the field and picking up quite an easy knockout there. Only Arcanine versus the other three Pokemon on Guillermo's side of the field. And Flare Blitz is going to be bringing that, I was going to call it Delibird, but not quite. I saw the present sack and I thought, oh, it's got to be. The Iron Bundle down to below half of its HP, whilst actually picking up a burn as well. That's not going to matter when it comes to its damage output. It will get a bit of tick at each end of the turn. However, that's not going to matter, because the most important thing is that Iron Bundle did what it had to. It had that Freeze Dry. It was so crucial in this matchup because we've got potentially two water types over on Flavio's side. We've got the Palafin, which is naturally a water type, but we also have the Golden Go, which we did see in that game one, did opt to go for that water Terra typing. And it kind of needed to, just because of the Shadow Ball threat from the other Golden Go. And when two of them face each other down, it's often the way that both of them need to think about terrestrialization just to make sure that they're not getting knocked out in one, especially after the nasty plots. So I think going back to game one, I think the really crucial part of that game was when Flavio lost the Iron Hands. Just playing that switch out game and, taking little bits of damage on both sides of the field through that match. Once you get to that point where one Pokemon gets knocked out, it reduces so many of your options, and Guillermo really took advantage of that going into the later part of game one. Yeah, because it's all about resource management in the end of the day, right? If you're able to, as we were talking about earlier on, pick up KOs where you can. You start forcing your opponent to play in a certain way where they're not able to rely as much on any switch-ins from the bat, which may be a bit more defensive based on the typing or even the board state. If there's speed control available on the field, you're able to, let's say, for example, switch in to a faster, more offensive Pokemon in order to take advantage of the current state. Right, and yeah, we're going to have to see Flavio going a little bit back to the drawing board on this game, going into game two. Do you know what I want to see, Costa? You might be surprised by this. Oh, okay. I want to see the Dragonite coming from Flavio. Wow! I would never have thought that then. But, looking at the team composition on Guillermo's side of the field, it could be really, really effective in being able to stand in front of those Intimidates with the clear amulet item. So Arcanine suddenly isn't going to be dropping its stats, and that was something that both players had to work around in the previous set. And of course, it can also boost itself up with its own Dragon Dance. So supported by that Amoonguss, which, okay, Guillermo can maybe knock out pretty quickly, but if you do that in exchange for a Dragon Dance and get yourself terrored up and go for those terror blasts into Guillermo's team, you might be able to punch a hole, so to speak, through the defensive backbone that Guillermo so expertly piloted in Game 1.
As we are going to be seeing our Game 2 leads, Guillermo is going to be bringing out the Iron Bundle and Golden Go, whilst on Flavio's side, we've got the Arcanine and Golden Go of his own once again.
The only switch up here is that Iron Bundle, I think, was on the right-hand side last game.
Potentially.
And the Golden Go was on the left. And the thing with these sort of games is both of these players know the matchups that they're playing, and it's not uncommon to see these sort of top-level players approaching the match in a similar way, at least from turn 1. But how the game is going to go based on turns 3, 4, 5, and 6 is going to really make a difference to how this gets going.
Exactly, as we're going to be seeing the terrestrialization right now from Flavio's side, it is going to be the Arcanine into the grass type. So this typing of its own will allow it to at least avoid any sort of super effective water type moves, but we see a read being played out there. Maybe Guillermo anticipating the water terror type on the Golden Go as opposed to the Arcanine Flare Blitz, not quite able to pick up a KO there. Shadow Ball from Guillermo's Golden Go, not enough to pick up a KO on Flavio's Golden Go either, but guess what? Make it rain with a double up of the Flare Blitz. Even if it was a critical hit there, did not matter. It was within such a range of low HP, it was still going down. And the important thing, of course, there is that Flavio all of a sudden has turned on the gears.
Right, quick knockout here coming out in the early Game 2. And I really like the way that Guillermo played that, actually, even though losing the Golden Go on turn 1 and bringing your Iron Bundle down to such low health is a difficult spot to be in. The way that Guillermo attacked into the Golden Go, I think, is really commendable. If it goes for Terra Water, you get a super effective Freeze Dry and a neutral Shadow Ball. If it doesn't, you get a super effective Shadow Ball and a resisted Freeze Dry, which is exactly obviously what we saw. It would have been a little bit more damage if the Golden Go had gone for the Water Terror, but the Arcanine doing that does put itself in a position where it's like, okay, now the Iron Bundle doesn't have to use inaccurate moves in order to do lots and lots of damage. So lots of different factors here. What is important, though, is, of course, that Flavio is one Pokemon up at this stage.
Exactly, as we're going to be seeing the Iron Hands brought in. Guillermo opted to go for the Protect there, maybe in anticipation of an extreme speed coming out from Flavio's side of the field from the Arcanine, of course. Flare Blitz does target down the Iron Hands, does not pick up any sort of burn. Make It Rain will be coming out from Flavio's Golden Go. Of course, Arcanine's there. It does resist Steel type moves, being a Fire type at the moment. So not a lot going on there, being able to impact it. This may even give incentive for Golden Go to perhaps switch out. Maybe Flavio wants to start playing a bit around more with potential pivots now that the Iron Hands is on the field. Yeah,
definitely. And the Iron Hands putting fake out pressure onto the field. Now that that Iron Bundle has protected, the fake out from the Iron Hands can go into it and probably will be enough to pick up even a knockout, even though fake out's not a very powerful move. So naturally, Guillermo wants to switch that out and get it out of danger.
Yes, as of course he does. Brings an Iron Hands of his own. Will-O-Wisp is going to be able to connect onto Flavio's Iron Hands, reducing its damage output by half, of course, dealing damage at the end of each turn as Nasty Plot, actually. No switch out from Golden Go, just wants to try to get back into the positive, now at +1 of its special attack, and like we were talking about, Ben, we see the Volt Switch going into what was the Iron Bundle slot. Very safe, because you're not anticipating a double protect in that scenario.
No, not at all. Very, very safe indeed. And allowing Flavio to play that pivoting game and try to get some momentum back. Getting that Nasty Plot as well, really great turn there for Flavio. Putting his Golden Go back up to neutral special attack after those two Make It Rains from the previous turn will make it a relevant threat going into the following turns. Of course, because it hasn't terrestrialized and cannot terrestrialize because of the Arcanine on Flavio's side of the field, it will be a ghost type. That means it can't get faked out by the Iron Hands on Guillermo's side of the field, and does give it a little bit of flexibility at the cost of being still weak to that Flare Blitz on Guillermo's Arcanine.
Exactly, it's quite tough because you do have the option, of course, to go for Protect, or maybe even try to pivot and bring that Iron Hands back in on the field for the subsequent turn in order to allow for Fake Out to once again be on the field and get the Golden Go to avoid being directly threatened by a KO from the Arcanine's Flare Blitz.
Right, and that's again one of the things that's really difficult in this matchup. You look at game one, and Arcanine on both sides of the field with such pivotal Pokemon. And previously, they couldn't really face up against each other, right? But now that one's a grass type, yeah. Not feeling so great there for Flavio, but does have the opportunity to just keep on switching around.
It's as if Flavio's Arcanine is a tiny bit intimidated by the opposing one.
Hey.
As we're going to be seeing the Iron Hand switch in, so Faked Out Pressure will be available for the following turn. Flare Blitz does try to target down that slot as well, so we see Guillermo making the sort of read, saying, okay, I'm anticipating a very easy, straightforward Protect from the Golden Go. Surely Flavio does not want to risk that slot.
No, not at all. And it's so nice playing Iron Hands in this format because it can just keep switching in, getting that fake out pressure on the field. And I think it's a really nice position for Flavio to weave his way into, because now that Golden Go, it's like it keeps on recovering health with those protects and the switch in and the fake out and the and subsequent turns. So with it being at neutral stages of special attack, would have been able to put some pressure on the field, but it's just going to get knocked out by a Flare Blitz.
Would have been being the very key terms there, as we saw no further attempt for a double protect, no switch out there. Flavio did want to risk the Golden Go in case Guillermo wanted to play a bit more safe there, but Guillermo said, no, I'm just going to go for the safe play. It's all about trying to reduce the HP of my opponent's Pokemon. As we're going to be seeing the Volt Switch from Flavio's side, from the Iron Hands, allowing Flavio to bring in a new Pokemon could likely be the Arcanine, or actually we see it's the Amoonguss, and because of that interaction, the fact that Golden Go did actually go down, it means Iron Hands could actually be brought back onto the field at the end of this turn.
Right, and then bring the fake out into play, but of course there's an Iron Hands again on Guillermo's side of the field, so that can be switched out, that can be switched back in. Of course, we've got now a position where we have the Arcanine and the Amoonguss on Flavio's side of the field. We know that Arcanine on Flavio's team does in fact have the ability to go for an extreme speed now, but it is the Iron Hands that is coming in. And
that's sort of what Guillermo has been taking into consideration as well, right? The fact that there's a potential of the extreme speed. You really need to navigate that Iron Bundle, if you're Guillermo, as best as possible against that higher priority.
Right, and so, like, yeah, you can get to fake out this turn. Maybe you switch in the Arcanine in here for the Amoonguss and try to, get into a position where either you get the knockout on the Iron Bundle with a fake out, definitely not this turn because of the Protect, but then if you don't, then you get it next turn with that all-important extreme speed on the Arcanine.
I was going to say, there may be potential style points if Flavio opted to go for the Volt Switch into his own Amoonguss, but no, we do see it the other way around. Pollen Puff will be able to recover this Iron Hands by half of its HP worth. Sort of anticipated there, having the double protect, you need to be cautious of the fake out pressure, and if you're Guillermo, you really don't want to have any of your momentum slowed down.
No, not at all. And unfortunately for this Arcanine, it isn't carrying the safety goggles. It's carrying that Pinch Berry that's going to be restoring its health at low proportions. So the Rage Powder coming in here from the Amoonguss, especially given that there is an Encore rather than the Icy Wind, I believe, on the Iron Bundle on Guillermo's side of the field, means that there's no spread damage to try and, get some more offensive pressure going out onto this Iron Hands. But a Terra Grass coming out from the Arcanine here, going to be ignoring Amoonguss completely.
And that sort of shows the utility of this terrestrialization type choice. Encore, all of a sudden just proving its worth right now, as opposed to, let's say, Icy Wind, which is normally the move that is opted to be used. Locks this Iron Hands into Fake Out, so now it is forced to likely switch out in order to allow it to move, but that sets the scene quite nicely for Guillermo, because he's going to anticipate that unless Flavio goes for the next level of, sure, I'll stay in whilst Encore to avoid that free damage targeting that slot.
But that's the problem, right? Because you've got just an Iron Hands on the field clapping away, but it's not doing anything, is it? I mean, you know, it's not going to be putting any damage onto the field. It's not going to be getting any flinches there. And so, like, okay, if you switch out the Amoongus instead, leave the Iron Hands on the field, it's going to be, you know, pretty useless. Maybe you have to, but not in this case. The Iron Hands does indeed leave and will not be doing its encore any longer.
It will not indeed, as Arcanine over on Flavio's side, which also so happens to be, of course, a grass Terra type at the moment, is going to be able to bring its Intimidate onto the field. Encore from that Iron Bundle does target down the Amoongus. Makes a lot of sense there. Flare Blitz just to deal a bit of damage. We start seeing how the Intimidate cycles have actually been coming into effect, and now Amoongus, unfortunately for itself, the cute little mushroom is stuck in Protect, which once again brings this scenario of, okay, this slot may now have to switch out, but at least you get a bit of a regenerator HP recovery.
Yeah, and this is so tough, right? So you've got the extreme speed that's possible from the Arcanine on Flavio's side of the field. If you leave your Iron Bundle in here, if you're Guillermo, then it can either get knocked out straight away by the extreme speed, or the Amoongus that doesn't really want to stay in here can switch out into the Iron Hands that's got pretty good health remaining. And if the Iron Bundle's still on the field, it can just Fake Out next turn. So we're getting into a position where Guillermo can get pinned down by Flavio with the switching up of the moves here, especially with the amount of Intimidates that's on that Arcanine on Guillermo's side of the field. Not a lot of damage coming out.
Exactly that. Arcanine on Flavio's side does go for the Protect. Will we see a Will-O-Wisp is the question into this Iron Hand slot, which may be the read. Freeze Dry goes into that Protect, trying to super effectively hit it, of course, being the Grass type. Oh, and it's a double up right there. Guillermo just trying to tunnel vision straight into that Grass Arcanine, and allowing the Iron Hands now to have Fake Out pressure.
Right, but we've only seen the Iron Hands Fake Out once out of like 4 or 5 times that it's been able to, so unlikely to see Flavio, I think, go for it again, especially in front of that Encore, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's a really hard call to be made, but I think maybe you have to go for the Fake Out into the Arcanine slot this turn and just target down the Iron Bundle with extreme speed, or maybe even play it a little bit more offensively and get a Flare Blitz. Just try to bait the switch out into the Iron Hands that's in the back for Guillermo and try to whittle it down.
So we are going to be seeing Iron Hands on Guillermo's side now come onto the field, will have its own Fake Out pressure in the following turn, and quite a nice move right there from the Iron Bundle. Wants to go for the Protect, which does allow it room to go for an Encore and lock Flavio's Iron Hands if it did so choose to try to go for that Fake Out. But no, we see a very nice play from Flavio. Good targeting there, being able to get a bit of damage onto the Iron Hands of Guillermo's side, as well as the pivot. The pivot is really, really good right now.
It is, and that Amoongus, because it's been pivoting about, has had use of its Regenerator ability. I'd be really shocked if a double up here from the Iron Hands and the Freeze Dry from Guillermo's Iron Bundle would be enough to pick up the KO on this Amoongus from this health range. And, you know, you've got to be worried a little bit about the Fake Out, but I'm just wondering about the potential as to whether Flavio can play a little bit more offensively here and just double down into that Iron Bundle and pick up the knockout, or at least do a lot of damage to the Arcanine in the back.
Surely you can, because at least you've got the option of going for a redirection of the Rage Powder, at least from this oncoming Iron Bundle, right? You're not too worried if you're locked into it, because at least you'll be able to pick up a KO onto this Iron Bundle unless it attempts a double Protect.
Right, and Intimidate coming in from Arcanine on the switch in. Another Protect from Arcanine on Flavio's side of the field. Freeze Dry going into that Protect, so maybe a little bit of a read coming in here, and we'll see if the Amoonguss is going to launch a Spore. Going to be hitting into the Arcanine. These players are matching each other move for move. Like, we've been here for probably the last 5 minutes, and there's barely been any damage on the field.
It's like one of them is in control of both of the switches, and they're like, okay, I'm going to click this, and then I'm going to click this on X device. Yeah.
They might be chatting to each other like, yeah, do you want to just switch that thing in so I can spore it? And that'll look really cool for the camera here.
That really would.
Oh my God.
What is even more cooler is that freeze dry KO onto the Arcanine. Not something you commonly see it being able to be taken out from that move. Flare Blitz on Arcanine, from Arcanine on Guillermo's side, not quite enough to pick up the KO on Amoonguss, and all of a sudden the game has opened up. We see another KO which may go ahead and give all of the momentum swing straight into Guillermo's favor. However, we see the Spore targeting that Iron Bundle, not actually opting to try to pick up a KO there. Surely you would be able to do so with a Pollen Puff, but perhaps this is part of the strategy of Flavio going into this next turn.
I like the Pokemon being asleep because, one of the things that's really important about Pokemon is trying to grab momentum. Sometimes it's not actually a good idea to knock a Pokemon out. You just want to keep that Pokemon that's on the field not doing anything instead, so you can target down the other slots. Again, a lot of Protects coming out here. The Iron Hands coming onto the field from Flavio's side of the field, and we're going to see that Volt Switch finally being able to take the knockout onto the Iron Bundle. It's been hanging on there with 13 health for 10 turns now. It's finally had the opportunity to go and have a little bit of a rest.
It really, really has a well-deserved rest at that as well. Unfortunately, of course, I think with Flavio right now, there's not a lot that you can do. I feel you're kind of pinned, and I think both of these trainers did acknowledge that. We see Flavio go ahead and put in the forfeit because the game was taken away with all of those momentum swings we had. It was very crucial for the Iron Bundle. Once again, I think has to be the MVP in that scenario, picking up the very crucial KOs it needs to in order to ensure Guillermo the win in both games.
We do need to check if the players could hear us, because it was we've not seen any damage for turns after turns after turns, and then right there, boom, the freeze dry just takes a quick knockout. It's I'm sure that could have happened 5 turns ago, but to be fair, you have to make these reads, and like we were saying, these players are matching each other toe for toe, and at some point, one of them just has that flash of brilliance to be able to break the position wide open and get themselves to that winning position.
Okay, I mean, yes, 100%, and of course, that was Guillermo that was able to come out on top in what was a 2-0 victory, which most definitely did not feel like a 2-0 victory. I know we mentioned that about a couple of games prior in the previous rounds, but this has to be the actual staple of this. This really didn't feel like a 2-0.
It was a long match, but I really love seeing those kind of players going up against each other, because you can see how they're both trying to preserve their resources. You see them switching around, protecting, and I think that speaks to the consistency of both players as well. That's how you get to the end of a tournament in some cases. You make a switch and you don't just go for the fake out. You try and take a little bit of advantage from your opponent playing defensively to just increase your board position a little bit and do a little bit else on the side until you get to that position, as Guillermo did, where you can just open up and you're in a great spot to just take a key knockout, and then the game kind of gets decided pretty quickly from there.
It kind of does, and I think it's, like we said, it's about that boiling point moment where you're able to all of a sudden have all of this momentum that's been generating on the side up until you're like, no, right, this is the turn I need to act. If I do this, I get rid of that slot, which opens up my win con all of a sudden once again, and that's it. That's essentially what we saw, and the Iron Bundle was so crucial for that relative mirror matchup, because there wasn't much or there wasn't as much offensive presence from a freeze-dry user over on Flavio's side, that he could have utilized the same pretty much strategy in order to pick up the necessary KOs needed over on Guillermo's side.
And what's quite interesting, early in that game one, we saw the Arcanine on Flavio's side of the field go for the Terra Grass.
Yeah.
Probably trying to not take as much damage from a Hydro Pump instead of being weak to it. Exactly. You resist it instead. We saw something obviously slightly different from Guillermo coming out onto the field there, but I really like going back to that pivotal moment at the start, because if you actually think about the matchup, there wasn't actually any reason for Flavio to go for the Terra Grass other than to soak up damage from the Iron Bundle's Hydro Pump. Yeah. And I think that's probably actually what led to a position where Guillermo was able to take a victory, because you get to a place where the Arcanines against each other, you can't just sit with your Arcanine in front of an Arcanine on your opposing side of the field. That means you can't go for extreme speed as freely as you'd like to.
Which normally you do, right? We've got two Arcanines facing each other. You're not expecting a lot of damage to go down. You're just expecting a lot of support from both of them as in order to enable their partner Pokemon. But when you turn everything up on its head and you've got a Fire-type Arcanine against a Grass-type Arcanine, you have to make those defensive plays even for that Pokemon, which you normally really wouldn't have to.
Not at all, and we are going to get the opportunity to talk to Guillermo about the matchup and ask him a few questions about how he was, getting to the end of that match and how he was feeling. So stay tuned. We're going to be casting over to the couch where Lou will be interviewing Guillermo Castilla, the winner of round 6.
Welcome back, Pokemon trainers. I am indeed joined in the winner's interview by Guillermo, who just won in probably the closest fought battle we have had today. You said yourself it was probably the best match you've played in a long, long time. Talk us through your thoughts during that game.
Thank you, Lou. I think that probably is one of the best sets I have played ever. Flavio is one of the greatest European players, also a good friend, and I enjoyed the play against him. Our four Pokemon are similar, so it was a mirror that depend about more reads and try to make the position better than the opponent, and I enjoy it a lot. First one, I think I played so well, and I outplayed him during all the match. But the second one with the Terra Grass from Arcanine was something I didn't expect. I thought he was going to Terra Crystallize to Golden in water, and this is the reason I make Freeze Dry and Shadow Ball. It's some kind of movement that you can do if you are 1-0 during the set. But no, was the Arcanine and was so good to play the game.
I'm glad you mentioned the Terra types, because that played such a big role. And not only did you have 4 of the same Pokemon, but you both had Water Golden Go, you both had the Grass Arcanine. Obviously, Terra types have been a thing that you could use offensively to boost up your offensive power. But we saw in your matchup be defensive. Talking about Terra types in general, is that something that you as the team builder want going into a match? Do you prefer a defensive Terra type?
Well, I always say that with the Terra types, you have to build not only with the 6 Pokemon, are trying to make in 3 dimensions. So you have the types of your 6 Pokemon, and then you have to build like a circle, like a sphere, in which you have to try to make another course with the probably Terra that you are gonna use. In case of Golden, it's really good with water, because you can face Arcanine. That is one of the menace that it has, and also the Grass type in Arcanine allow you to survive a Hydro Pump. Also try, in my case, I don't have safety goggles in the Arcanine, and it's really good to avoid the Spore from Among Us. So it's really funny. It's a kind of different conception of how to play Pokemon, but in my opinion, the top players like Flavio, like Wolfield, the last regional, also like me, of course. I think that we used to play too many mechanics, so it's something new to discover, and of course, really funny.
Yeah, it's been really refreshing to see Terra, and it's not just the types of the Pokemon, it's their Terra types you have to think about as well. you mentioned your team, and I want to talk about Iron Bundle, because both of you had similar Pokemon, but Iron Bundle seemed to be the key Pokemon for you in that match. Why was it so amazing for you to get that victory with Iron Bundle?
Well, when I was building the team, I had the same decision, the same choice that Flavio. So I tested the Palafin because it's really good against Dondozo. Also, that it has strong water type with a priority move, a haste. But at the end, I thought that freeze dry plus hydro pump is so strong in this metagame because you can hit really hard. So many things because the freeze dry can make some damage to water types, and in this case I think was the difference because my Iron Bundle could make so many damage to the Palafin, but Palafin doesn't have anything to do against me. So yes, I think that the matchup was better for me. Also that my Goldengo was faster than his. So I think that this difference in the building makes the difference, and then of course the player have to play, and the match I think for him, I also bought that viewers. I hope they enjoy it because I think it was amazing.
Yeah, we certainly enjoyed it here, and again, having that freeze dry, not only for the water type Pokemon, but the water Terra types that are running around is a really great thing for Iron Bundle. We'll let you go have rest before the next round, but of course, as always, do you want to use this opportunity to give a shout out to anyone supporting you that's team built with you or anything like that?
Well, I have to, first of all, to my girlfriend, because when I was in the final of Worlds, I forgot to say yes, to say that to her, and at the moment I arrived to her house, she told me, Guillermo, you didn't, yes. So first, Irene, for you, honey, always for you. And of course, my friend, it's really easy to make some good team and being in a good level when you have some strong people like Rio Paz, Eric Rios, like Alex Gomez, helping you all the time to change formation. It's really easy to be good with this kind of support. So then also so many Spanish players, and of course Getafe Club de Fútbol, my team, and the best football team ever.
Amazing. I'm glad you remembered your girlfriend this time. Don't ever do that again. No, never. Well, we'll let you go have some rest. Don't go anywhere though, Pokemon trainers, because we'll be back with the next round very soon.